As we go along, we will see more people join us. But let me tell you a little bit about the series itself, the Bliss Catcher series. This is the 31st edition of the series in its third season, in its third year. And we can't be doing this series month on month for 11 months in a year without the support of Team Odyssey. So I'd like to first take a moment to thank Team Odyssey for this. Silambam, he was here a little while ago, and his boss and my colleague, my friend Ashwin, together, they and this team put together this show every month for us, January through November, and we've been doing it for the third season running. Now, Bliss Catchers as a concept appears to be a conversation between my guests and me, which is a fact, but it is not just another conversation. I think what distinguishes Bliss Catchers is that this is a celebration of happy people. We bring together people who have understood the true meaning of life, who have decided to go after what they believe in and what they love doing. Now, my favorite poet, Rumi, yes, absolutely, my favorite poet Rumi says, everyone is created for a particular work. Everyone is created for a particular work, and the desire for that work has been put in your heart. So, in everyone's heart. So everyone is created for a particular work, and the desire for that work has been put in your heart. Now look at it carefully, think about it carefully. As long as you pursue that desire, as long as you follow that desire, you are happy. But what are we mostly doing? We are moving away from what we have been created for, and we are following life based on economic, financial compulsions. So we are earning a living all right, but we are not living fully. And Joseph Campbell, the American mythologist and the great thinker Campbell, said that if you follow your bliss, so the reason why we don't follow that bliss, why we don't follow what we are created for, is that we fear that we will let go of our economic framework. We will let go of the opportunity to earn an income. And so we take the easy way out, but we lead very unhappy and very incomplete lives. But Campbell says, on the other hand, if you let go of that thinking, first of all, let go of the thinking that you need economic security, and that economic security can get you happiness. If you let go of the thinking and follow your bliss, he says, doors will open. You will be connected with people in your zone of bliss, who will connect you to other people, and before you know it, you will be living a full life, a life full of happiness, and a life where you are also able to make yourself economically not just viable, but successful. And so my guests over the last 31 editions have all been people who have given up the comfort of predictable, comfortable lives and have taken the deep dive, trusting the process of life itself, and have gone on to do what they love doing. Now that's the story behind the Bliss Catchers conversations every month. And this month I have three wonderful guests. I'll come to them in a minute. But I want to talk a little bit about why Vani and I do this series, and why today's edition particularly is very, very special. Now, Vani and I are going through a decade-long bankruptcy. We're going through a decade-long phase of financial turmoil in our life, which means that for the longest times in this decade, our life has been broken in a physical sense, in a material sense. No work for long spells of time, no money. And this is the time when I wrote my book, Fall Like a Rose Petal. I wrote this book sharing what happens in life when you learn to live happy and content while living without money. So I went out and told the story, and the idea behind the book itself came about when I asked Ani one day, why are we struggling so much? Why are we going through so much of intense struggle to prove ourselves worthy of success to the world? Obviously, when you're in debt, when you're bankrupt, when you owe money to people, the first form of success, first denominator of success is that you should be able to earn an income to repay people that you owe money to. And that wasn't happening. And there was a huge struggle with that. So we said all our efforts to become successful are coming to a naught. So does it mean that we are useless? Does it mean that we are worthless? And that's when the idea of sharing what we had learned. So we had learned to be happy despite our circumstances. We had learned to be content by being non-worrying, non-frustrated, and non-suffering. And that's what I went out and told the world through this book, Fall Like a Rose Petal. One thing led to another, and the Bliss Catchers series was born in January 2015. And not just the Bliss Catchers, over the last 3 years, we have seeded 3 other event series across the city. And all 4 event series celebrate happiness. Our higher purpose in life for Vani and me is inspiring people. Anybody who cares to pause and reflect, we are delighted to invite them to our lives and to share with them that it is possible to be happy despite your circumstances. So in that journey of the last 3 years that we have been together, Vani and I, doing 4 non-commercial events across the city, out of which the Bliss Catchers is the first one, the longest one. We are now today having our 100th guest among all 4 events today. And as I wrote on Facebook, as I put up a status on Facebook, I'm not going to decide whether it's Aishwarya or Vikram or Arun. That would be, sacrilege according to me. I'm just going to leave it ambiguous. Any one of them is guest number 100. Any one of them is 101 and any one of them is 102. But 100 guests means we have had the privilege of listening to 100 stories. We've had the privilege of sharing learnings from 100 people to hundreds of other people, both live audiences and through what we have posted on our channel, month on month, quarter on quarter, depending on the frequency of our events. So this is a special edition of the Bliss Catchers where we have our, this is not, by the way, the 100th guest on Bliss Catchers. This is the 100th guest across all 4 events. They are actually guest number 59, 60, and 61 in the 31st edition of the Bliss Catchers. So once again, I have great pleasure in welcoming Aishwarya, Vikram, and Arun here. I'm going to introduce them in a bit. The story behind their connecting with us is very unique. We had heard of Aishwarya many months ago, and we've been watching her from a distance. We did know of her as an artist, as a designer, as an art educator. But then it was at the Brew Women's Awards in March this year, Aishwarya, when we actually saw her speak on stage when she received the award. And there was so much conviction in her love for what she was doing. There was so much passion for what she was doing. She talked passionately about her deep immersion with the martial art form of Silambam. And one would imagine then that Silambam is her bliss, and that's what she's following. But then she corrected me and said, Silambam gives me an opportunity to explore my bliss, which is art and design. And it makes me a better human being, it makes me a better performer, it makes me a better designer. And so we said, hey, this is a fascinating story and we must curate it on our show. And that's how we have Aishwarya with us this evening. She's a much celebrated artist, and she's won many awards. But I think today we are going to talk to her about something that she's probably rarely shared, her journey, and what makes this journey very valuable for her. So thank you, Aishwarya, for joining us. We also have Vikram and Arun, and how we got connected to some of our Bliss Catchers is that Bliss Catchers refer us to Bliss Catchers. So we had Veeru Murugappan. Some of you who are regulars here would remember meeting Veeru Murugappan last year. I think it was in September last year, about a year ago exactly, that we had Veeru in the second season of the Bliss Catchers. Veeru, who is a sports broadcaster, a storyteller from the world of sports and television, who gave up a set corporate life for him. His father is a leading industrialist. He's part of the Murugappa group, but he decided to give up all that and pursue sports broadcasting. So Veeru was our guest, and when Veeru finished his edition of Bliss Catchers with us, he wrote me a mail connecting me with Arun and Vikram. So I tucked it away. This is information which is useful, so I tucked it away. Most of our Bliss Catcher editions are curated well in advance. So for instance, for 2017, we are already closed, and we are opening 2018 season right now for curation. So when this information came to me, we were already closed for 2016, and so I couldn't take up the curation immediately. But when I actually sat down to have coffee with Vikram and Arun, what struck me most was that they both amazingly fit people. Look at that, they're like sculpted people, and so is Aishwarya. I should not leave you out. So very, very inspiring from that point of view. The second is their lives kind of mirror or amplify the message of their brand, GetFit. And so here are two people who gave away predictable, successful, possibly corporate careers to go around and change the way India thinks about sports. So they've been around for 5 years now, about 5 years, and their purpose, and we'll talk a little bit about that, appears to be to tell everyone, whoever is willing to listen, to tell everyone that sports is for everyone, that there is a sports culture that must be built in this country. And they not only do it for students and corporates through GetFit, they also do it for those who cannot afford it through their NGO, Life is a Ball. Arun here has a degree from IIM. He's worked with IMG, and we have him as one of the people who designed, who conceptualized the Indian Super League, the football league, the Indian Super League, and he decides to give it all up and focus on GetFit, and that's really what's going to make this story very exciting. He's been a national level tennis champion himself, and so has Vikram Aditya Menon. That's your full name. So has Vikram Aditya Menon. He's been a national level junior tennis champion. He's been a coach and an entrepreneur, and has decided to invest his life and time into making sports accessible to every Indian, both those that can afford it and those that cannot. And I think that's a fascinating story as well. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Can we give them a warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen? So the seats got taken randomly. I thought you would have worked out something. Okay, so here's your microphone. Can you just take your mics and turn them on and check if they're not working? So thank you for joining us. The way this conversation will pan out is I'll be asking them questions, and we'll actually be in a very free-flowing conversation for the next 50-odd minutes till about 8:05. That's what I've timed it for. And then we'll open up the floor for questions with you in the audience. And then we'll close sharp at 8:29, which is customary at the Bliss Catchers. So people can go and get their life going on a Saturday evening.
Saturday night.
Yeah, Saturday night, absolutely. So, all set? Yeah. So, let's, may I request everyone to keep their mobile phones on silent or switched off mode. silent mode. Please take pictures. Please tweet to AVIS Viswanathan if you are on Twitter. If Twitter is uncool, then it's the Happiness Wala with happiness with a Y and Wala with a W. The Happiness Wala on Instagram. So yeah, so some people find Twitter uncool these days. Okay, so let's get started. I'll probably start with Arun and Vikram, and let's talk a little bit about early influences in your life. You are 5 years into an entrepreneurial idea on one side. On the other side, it's to me personally, it's an idea driven by a huge sense of purpose. And I'll talk about it, elaborate about it shortly. But do you remember from your childhood any early influences that even pointed you in this direction that you would be pursuing sport in a different way? Did that happen? So I'd like to hear both your views on that.
So for me it's different. I wouldn't say I figured out that sport is my way of life, or that's going to be my career choice at a later point. So for me it was more like I was associated with sport from a very young age. It probably started when I was really small, and I think my parents found me super naughty, and I was pushed into school when I was 2.5 years. So I was in first standard when I was 2.5 years of age. And I was always into something, be it athletics or football, just running around making a mess of myself. But I never restricted myself to one particular sport. I kept myself open and I was just playing around. And it never occurred to me that sport is going to be, a bread earner for me at a later point. But things started changing when I was in college and after I finished college. Because I grew up in a common where we used to play outside all the time. And when I was in college, what I figured out was the ground was empty. Not a single kid was using the facility. And most of these kids were glued to their television sets. And after IMG, that's when things changed. When I saw the reality of sport in the country. And that's when I figured sport is where I want to be. And I'd like to make a change there.
So the influence actually happened later on, but in the early stages, it was something that just happened with the flow. You were naughty, you found yourself outdoor and connecting with the outdoors and playing a lot of sport. That's all.
I figured out what childhood was with sport and playing,
right.
And then I found that it was lost in the current generation kids.
Right.
And that's a huge thing that the children are missing nowadays, and that's not fair. And I don't think the kids are to blame.
We'll come to that. I think you're making a very, very important point there. We'll come to that, but I'll go to Vikram for his early influences and the way he dealt with his life.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I think I come from a sporting family. My dad, granddad, mom, pretty much everybody played sport at some level. So when I was 3, I was introduced to sport. Started playing sport and pretty much through my childhood. Started competing when I was 7, and ever since then it was just sport for me. Even when I was in school, I was known as the guy who had this Nike bag, 1 ruler and 4 tennis balls in the bag. That's all I used to carry. So I think in terms of an influence, since I was introduced to it at such a young age, and since I really enjoyed it, that's something that stuck.
Okay, and again, continuing your journeys, again, both of you may answer this. In terms of going away in life, both of you grew up together as friends, and then you found your way. You went to IIM, you went to almost a corporate role. Was it a corporate role at IMG? Yeah, typical, high-profile MNC role at IMG. You go away and you go to coaching. Then how do you guys reconnect? How did the reconnect happen for both of you? Is there something that happened that made you come together to conceive of this idea of GetFit?
So in terms of the idea, there's a third partner who's one of India's best tennis players, ever, Somdev. So Som and me in 2012 were just sitting and just discussing a few sports-based ideas. And a friend of mine owns a school in Chennai, and she was talking about her physical education program. So that's when we thought, okay, fine, you know what? Based on our experience, there was no physical education in school. There was a PT master who would wear just pants and slippers with a whistle. He checks your nails, and that's all he used to do. But that's not physical education. So that's when we came about with the idea. And so we made very similar. We're best friends, constantly at each other. So we needed somebody who would bring a lot of structure yet have the same passion. That's when we got on. So we told him about the idea. He really liked it, and we jumped in.
That's interesting. So you remember that day when they called you and said, hey, there's an idea? What was your first response?
Yeah, so the first thing I told them was this is exactly what I had in mind as well, because my business plan for my interviews for my IM interview and everything was something very similar, which was working with the grassroots and making a difference in the grassroots, basically in the bottom of the pyramid, because we had a lot of things sorted on the top of the pyramid. So we had the IPL already going and a lot of leagues were taking shape, but there was hardly any Indian talent, so to say, in other sports except for cricket. And making a difference at the grassroots level was always a dream of mine. And what better place to start working with children than in their own schools. And when they approached me with this, I mean, I knew right away what I wanted to do. And that's how all of us got together. But before, I mean, I'd like to say that you were always in touch, and tennis always kept us in touch. Somdev was probably the common link, and we were always, whenever he was in Chennai or when we traveled, we always get together and just start talking about random stuff, especially the past during our childhood days playing tennis. So that was always going. But this idea, as soon as they came, it was
so
yeah.
Right away, was it an instantaneous decision? Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I just want to amplify one point which you said earlier on to the earlier question. Did you feel that sense you got when you went to college, when you found the grounds empty? Did you find that sense driving your idea, your business idea, that you must get people into the outdoor, you must do something to promote the idea of sport as people advance through college and into life itself? Did you find that sense driving you in some way?
To be frank, the first time I saw it was more like a feeling where it was more like, what do these kids do nowadays? Because
where are they? What are they doing?
What do they do? Because when I was a kid, I was always outside, and every evening my dad will come with a stick, searching for me from tree to tree. So he'll look up in the trees and he'll look for me. And then that's the way I got back home, and that will be like around 8 p.m. at night. And I was wondering where the kids were, but it didn't really, grew into a business idea or anything of that sort. But it was always there at the back of my mind. And as I was studying, going through education, and that's when I figured out, there is a business opportunity here as well.
And that's how in your IIM or your mock business plans were all based on something to do with sport at the grassroots level.
Precisely.
Okay, that's interesting. So the learning I'm picking up from their story so far is that none of our experiences, what we feel about, is in vain. Every experience, in a way, connects back to what we end up doing in life, or not doing in life, depending on how that experience has gone for us. So if you look at Vikram's point, the PT master would wear slippers, trousers, and come and check fundamentally, hygiene levels are fine, shoes are polished, and if your nails are clipped, and all of that. I'm aghast, Vikram, that's what my PT master used to do in school, and I reckon in your generation that was repeated again. It hasn't changed. So that sense of feeling, we all used to make. I think the most ridiculed teachers were the PT masters, right? In school. And so I think many of us just move on with our lives. And one thing I'm picking up here is that they didn't let that feeling go away. And so did Arun. His feeling that the empty grounds, where are these children? What are they doing? I think when you take that feeling and ask deep searching questions, there is some meaning that can come out of that questioning. And that's what I gather from your stories so far. We'll come back to your stories and talk more about how this kind of got fleshed into the concept of GetFit itself, because an idea is different from actual execution, right? And so we'll talk about that in a bit, but let's move to Aishwarya. So Aishwarya, again a question about your early influence. So you could have been a doctor, you could have been the predictable engineer, lawyer, author, actor, dancer, whatever. But what drove you in the direction of art and education, in art and design, primarily art? I mean, what made you be the artist, designer that you are today? Any remembrances of the early influences?
Well, I come from a family of doctors and engineers.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So you asked me the right question. My father is an engineer. Especially my paternal side of the family is all either a doctor or an engineer. But I think in that way I've been really blessed, because my family was very clear that I follow whatever it is that I'm interested in. And I mean, I did science in school, and I think it's a common misconception that we think that art and design is something completely different from science or economics or sociology or whatever it is that we do in school. What I believe in is that creativity, art and design, brings together all the different subjects that are there. And I think we need to have an understanding of science and mathematics and physics and economics and business, and all of that put together is what makes a person a successful creator at the end of the day. I think in another way, family influences, both paternal and maternal grandmothers were extremely strong individuals who were juggling between a professional career, plus they used to do so many different things. They were really good artists, they were doing social work, even at that age, I mean, at that period of time. So I think in that sense, the early age, I've been seeing people in my family. My dad is a tennis player as well. So in terms of sports, we've always been people who love going outdoors, cycling and trekking and all of that. So I can literally, everything that I do today, I can link it to so many different things that I've seen and experienced in my family right from my childhood. But with regards to art and design, I was very clear even when I was in school that I wanted to pursue design. But the shift to education happened in a very organic manner. I did my undergraduation under Madras University and my master's in Singapore, and that made me realize the gaps in the Indian education system, especially in relation to creative education. Because the system that we're following today in our education system is the same thing that was set by the Britishers hundreds of years ago. So what we do right now is the system that they produced in order to create clerks and not leaders, which is why our school education a lot of times puts students down from asking questions, from lateral thinking, from coming up with different types of solutions. And I think that is what led me to get into education in a very personal way. So through my studio, MAISHA Studio, I work with a lot of students from different age groups, and I feel like art and design is just a means of expression. For one person it could be music, for another person it could be computer programming, for another person it could be mathematics. So these are just different languages in order to express your creativity. And I feel that satisfaction for me comes through working with these students and getting them to explore their own way of thinking and then decide how they want to express it. So art and design is just one means of expression. I still don't feel like that kind of encapsulates the whole thing. I don't expect my students to become artists or designers. I have a lot of students who become lawyers, who become doctors, who become scientists, but who know that they are artists in a way. And I think that is what is most important, and we are all creators. And my work kind of moves towards that direction of getting people to understand and acknowledge the fact that creativity lies in everybody.
I think you covered my next question for you. I'll come back to it. But let's go back to my question where I heard you say that for you the decision on being in art and design was an early decision. Do you remember anything from your early childhood when you had this, was it an aha effect? One fine day you said, hey, this is what I enjoy doing in life, or did it grow on you?
There wasn't a single moment that way. And very frankly, I studied in a matriculation school where I was expected to mug up and reproduce, and I was the last person in the world who was capable of doing that.
So you're not enjoying that?
So I was a very, very average student when I was in school. The minute I got into college and when I started doing a course that I picked, wherein it was subjects that were related to my interests, I came out as a university first rank holder from being a very, very average student in school. So I still have a lot of my friends from school and teachers from school who ask me, why did you have to go through the trouble of doing maths, physics, chemistry, computer science when you ended up doing design? And to me that itself it doesn't come together, because at the end of the day, at every stage, it's just about finding things that you like to do and do it wholeheartedly. My mom is a PhD in economics and I can't even spell economics. I can't spell commerce. So there's no way in which I could have possibly done anything else but science, because science is my interest. So I think it's really important, and for me, even though I was interested in design, it was a very organic process. I was very clear that I was not even going to apply to an engineering course, but there wasn't one single moment that defined it.
I think you beautifully brought out a very powerful point, which is the state of education and how creative thinking can help the education process, especially from a student point of view, right? Isn't that what you're trying to communicate? So what I missed in her introduction is that she runs the MAISHA Studio, which is her studio, and they specialize in creative services in the area of art, design, and education. And what she's saying is extremely relevant to how most of us experience the education system in India. So I'm going to ask you a question which will help you kind of build up on the earlier answer you gave me. What's your vision for, do you find art and design utilitarian in a way which is not commonly felt, which is, those mugs out there are designed, right? The phones we use are designed. So that's one utilitarian part of art and design, but do you find it utilitarian in a conceptual way, like in education? So what's your vision for MAISHA Studio and the education-led services that you are into?
Like I said before, I don't expect my students to pick up design or art as a mainstream career. But at the same time, I think it's also really fascinating when you think about it. Design is everywhere. From the floor panels that we're standing on right now to the chair that we're sitting on, the fabric or the upholstery material, the jewelry that I'm wearing, to the clothes or the textile that my clothes have been made from, everything around us is design. Every single thing. The spectacles that we wear, there's a designer behind it. The car that we drive, there's a designer behind it. So this awareness really makes us come to terms with the fact about how huge design actually plays a role in our day-to-day life. I think because of the lack of awareness and education, again, a lot of people think that art and design is like, stand in front of an easel, just throw paint around. It's a very romanticized idea. But there's so much of technicality that goes behind it, which I think is what is making a lot of people get into it in a more mainstream, full-fledged manner. The other aspect that I think you rightly mentioned and which I think is really important is conceptual thinking. A lot of times nowadays, irrespective of what subject we deal with, thinking happens through Google search engine. Thinking doesn't happen instantly through our own mind. You give a student a certain topic, the first immediate response, Google search. So I think what I really work with my students is to get them to be confident and strong about their own thought processes, about their own way of thinking. irrespective of gender, irrespective of age, irrespective of background, irrespective of educational background, irrespective of physical or economic status. Each of us as individuals need to be clear in the way we think, and that I think is the very first and the most important starting point in order to get into the action mode. So there's a very thin line between an idea and being successful, right? This is just action. So for that, you first need to be confident and strong as an independent thinker. And in that way, I feel that creativity plays an extremely important role. And for me, in terms of education in general, that is what I aim to achieve. With every student, get them to understand themselves and define themselves in a strong and in a confident manner.
So what you're essentially doing is you're bridging a very important gap. Students are coming out of different education streams and they lack that sense of creative thinking, and you expand their perspective and you kind of involve them in the creative process, which helps them to go on and lead more fulfilling lives. That's really what you're doing.
Leaders and innovators,
right,
in any way, need not necessarily be in the professional side, right? It could be just in everyday situations. It could be over a discussion. It could be a conversation with friends and family. But that's precisely what I was. So
one of the things about Aishwarya is that she's an international Silambam champion, and that part of her story is very, very, very powerful. And we're going to come to that part in the next segment once I finish with Arun and Vikram and ask them the next set of questions. But there is a deep connect between what she has just shared with us and what Silambam does to her. Okay, and we'll come back and explore that in a bit. Let's go back to Arun and Vikram. So, questions for you, gentlemen. Very, very simple. The calls came, the idea was suggested, so they, two of you get together and you say, let's go start a company. Now, when I look at your 5-year journey, I personally feel it's driven by a very beautiful single line that sport is for everyone. Make it accessible, make it reachable, connect people with sport. I think it all comes from that single line, sport is for everyone. So when you sat down to build GetFit into an organization, into the idea to an organization phase, did you approach it very systematically and say this will be the purpose that we will follow, this is the vision we have, this is how many people we're going to touch, and did you say, put it all in an Excel sheet and draw up a business plan? Or did you get down and say, let's go out and get our first school, let's go out and get our first set of students, let's get our first proper physical educator out there who can go and talk proper sports to kids? How did that happen?
So was the former, where we actually sat down and got a business plan together. Surprisingly, Som did not have a lot of time to spare, and he was still busy with the circuit, and in fact he was doing extremely well that season. And we planned a trip to Dubai with him where he was playing an event in Dubai. So we basically sat there and we were discussing ideas. So we were sitting there, coming up with various scenarios. But the plan was very simple. The mission is the same, but the goals and the targets that we had then and our modus operandi kind of changed like at least 15 times from the time we started to where we are right now.
That's the changing.
Yeah, it's like an ever evolving thing right now, right? So, but the goal is the same, like you said, making sport accessible, teaching various values to anybody around through sport. So all of that is the same, but the way we approach it is evolving.
It's continuously evolving.
Yeah.
Okay. Vikram, do you want to add on to it, or I have another question? When friends get together to do business, there can be a lot of mushy ground, right? Which is we're good pals. So business is all about hard-nosed decisions. Business is all about speed, agility, clarity. Now, how did that get sorted out between the two of you or three of you? And how did you place the business interest ahead of personal interest?
I think it has to do with personalities. I think all three of us have both sides to us, where we're serious about certain things and we're not that serious about most other things. And that, I think, is the biggest strength for us. I personally believe that we live in a very serious world. Everyone is always chasing things, trying to do things, which is okay, but we make sure that we have other things that we do as well. So it's not us being friends just to work together. It's friends first and then work comes after that. So that's basically how we operate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you still have the ability to hold a mirror to each other on the business side, just as you would do on the friends side?
I don't understand the question.
The question is, do you ask each other hard-nosed questions about the business the way you would ask each other as friends?
I mean, almost every day.
Okay.
Almost every day. So I think we have timings for it. If it's inside office, it's business-based questions, and outside it's not.
Okay. Yeah, you wanted to add something?
Yeah. So the way it works is the three of us. So we are good at three different things. So there's no overlap, in terms of our forte or expertise. So what I handle in the business side of things is something that Vikram doesn't focus most into.
Because I don't know about it.
Because you don't know about it. And you're very clear about the fact that you don't know that, right? Okay.
And it's the same with Somdev as well. So all of us take care of completely different divisions or functions, so to say. But all of us have a small idea of each other's functions, and that's because we learned it from each other. So I learned a lot about coming up with lesson plans and devising your physical education program and the curriculum from Vikram. So I learned a lot about reaching out to people and just being that marketing self that Somdev is from him. And so I try to impart as much as I can with computers and business administration and all of that with both of them. And that's the way the whole company has been, it's running. It's been smooth, and I'm very, very sure it'll remain this way. Because as he said, friendship is always first, everything else comes next.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think what they've just said is something very relevant in all our relationships in life, not just in business. Now, but let's first go to the statements they made. The three of us have three different skill sets, and we don't go into each other's area. That is called defining contours of a relationship. If you look at any relationship, we cross that border. Most of the time, we tread on somebody's toes, and that point which Vikram said, I don't know anything about that space. That lack of awareness of the fact that I don't know anything is what causes problems. But if you're aware that I don't know, so let the other person handle, I think it's a fantastic, fantastic sense of clarity. And that builds long-term relationships. That keeps the relating going on between people. The other point which they amplified, and that kind of came up in Aishwarya's, my conversation with Aishwarya as well, which is the sense of purpose. See, businesses are not set up, ideas are not generated with very clear definitions of why we are doing what we are doing. There is an underpinning, there is a need felt, and they felt that the need is to make sport accessible. Aishwarya felt the education system is going nowhere, and we need to do something about infusing creative thinking into the process. So when you look at it now, when you look back at what you've just done, the three of you have done in the last 5 odd years of your life, is you have approached life with a clear sense of purpose. A purpose is always answering, why are we here? Why are we here together? We're trying to understand, what does it take to be happy? What does it take to be pursuing what you believe in doing? And so there is a higher purpose to what we're doing. There's a higher purpose to what they're doing. There's a higher purpose to what Aishwarya is doing. Vision is always about, where are we going? What's the destination? So in their case, for example, they're already in 7 cities. you have 55 schools and 60,000 children that you've already touched. So that's a number that they've covered, and they obviously have a larger number in front of them. So that's vision, where they're going. That's the destination. Now, the way to reach that destination can always be tweaked, and that's what you're doing. You know, in the first few years, this is the method that works. In the next few years, this is the method that will work. Now, typically, when a satellite goes into orbit, the payload takes it to the first level, and then you need a different one to take it to the next level. So that method can always be tweaked. So very unwittingly, all three your story and Aishwarya's story, all three of you, in a way, are approaching life with a high sense of purpose and with a clear idea of where you're going. So the destination is in view. Now you may choose different ways of getting there, and we'll explore your journey as we go along. Okay. So this is the time for me to take a short break and come up with my quiz questions for our three guests over here. So these questions are from me to you on the guests, okay? And these are all easy questions with the exception of one. So I'll go with the tough question, which I think is the tough question. And the other two are pretty easy according to me. So hands will go up and the right answer will receive this beautiful mug, okay? So are you all ready, people?
Yes.
Okay? Now, my disclaimer, as always, my decision is final, okay? In terms of whose hand went up first. So please don't mind me if I don't award the mug to you. Can you connect Arun with a man called Mark Hume McCormick? One of the pioneers in the field of sports management.
All those things they do not teach in Harvard.
You got the answer, but I need a better connection. If I don't get a better connection, you get the mug, Ramesh. You got the answer. He named the book that Mark McCormick wrote, all that they don't teach you at Harvard Business Schools. Arun, can you give me the mug?
I can do this. That's the only mug you're going to win.
Okay, they kept referring to Somdev all evening so far, but I'm referring to a different Somdev. Can you connect Vikram to Mahakavi Somdev Bhatt? Everyone's looking blank at me. Even Vikram's friends are looking at me. There's a very famous movie which is running in the theaters right now, which has a dotted line connection to this story. Mahakavi Somdev Bhatt is an author, so I've given a clue. And the movie running is Vikram Veda. Another clue. No mug?
The actor name is Vikram. The actor name?
No, actor name is not Vikram. Actor's character's name is Vikram. No. You have to look at Vikram's full name, you will get the answer. The third clue. Quickly. No answers? Okay, no mugs. We saved a mug. So sad. Okay, so sad. Okay, the answer is Mahakavi Somdev Bhatt wrote Vikram or Betal. The original series on television. The original written by Mahakavi Somdev Bhatt was Betal Pachisi, based on which the Vikram and Betal series came about between King Vikramaditya and the ghost. So there you are, the other Somdev in your life. Okay, and this one is a real sitter, please people, also known as a Mokka question, please bear with me. This one is an Aishwarya. Okay. So, all set everyone? Please connect Aishwarya with the phrase, before midday. It's there right in front of you. You're all looking at it.
Bliss.
No, Bliss is non-time bound. So, I've given a clue there.
Odyssey?
Connect Aishwarya with before midday. I told you it's huh?
Odyssey?
No. Ramesh. Jairam. Absolutely right, Jairam. You got it? AM. Aishwarya Manivannan. AM. Okay, please. Jairam, please come forward for your mug. I told you it's a very mocha question. Thought up on the Uber ride here.
It's kind of creative.
It is creative, right? Thank you, Geeta. Thank you. So there we are, 3 questions, 2 of them go answered, 2 people get mugs. Jairam, is that your second mug?
No, that's my first.
This is your first. Happy coffee tomorrow morning. Okay, people, let's go back to the question and answer. Let me go to Aishwarya's story. So Aishwarya, where does Silambam come into this? And can you tell us about how it came into your life? And then we'll talk a little bit about what it does to you. Okay, but first let's talk about how does Silambam come into your life?
It was completely by chance. I used to learn Bharatanatyam many years ago, and my Bharatanatyam guru, Ms. Kavita Ramu, was talking to me about how traditional martial arts can help a lot in improving classical dance, the quality of a classical dancer. So I started looking up traditional martial art classes in Chennai, and of course I knew that there were a few Kalari classes, so I went and I was looking at the classes. I didn't really connect to it, and that's when my physical trainer told me about Power Pandyanathan, who is my Silambam guru. He said that he would introduce me to him, and quite frankly, I mean, of course I've heard of Silambam. I knew that it was a martial art form involving a stick, but that was all that I knew about. So I went to meet Power Pandyanathan once, and it was awesome because the classes were happening outdoor at the YMCA Nandanam grounds, and I'm a complete outdoor person, so I was so happy that it was in an air-conditioned space. And the training and the way in which the classes were held was so interesting that I immediately decided to start learning.
Which year was this?
This was 5 years back.
2012.
Yeah, end of 2012. So I started classes, so Silambam was meant to improve my Bharatanatyam. But it just so happened that about 8 months after I started Silambam classes, a completely different freak accident, nothing to do with Silambam or Bharatanatyam, led me to fracturing my spine, which meant 3 months of bed rest and 3 months of a back brace, and it gave me a lot of time to think as well. So up until then I was juggling between Bharatanatyam and Silambam, but the more and more Silambam I learned, I realized even more the kind of intensity and depth that it had as a traditional art form. And I felt that I just can't do justice to 2 amazing art forms such as Bharatanatyam and Silambam. And that was when I decided to continue Silambam on a more serious note and not split my time between 2. And here I am, 5 years, and I feel like I've just touched the tip of the iceberg.
That's fascinating that you should say that you get drawn from Bharatanatyam to Silambam. An accident happens, you immerse yourself more in Silambam, and eventually you kind of let go of Bharatanatyam. Was there a sense of aha while doing Silambam, which started receding with Bharatanatyam? Is that how it happened?
So it's a lot of different things. Number one, I think I was just extremely fascinated by the fact that I was in a space and I had the opportunity to learn a traditional martial art form of Tamil Nadu, which is more than 3,000 years old. So it's an art form that has been developed by our own ancestors, and it's been practiced for so many thousands of years, and I'm learning it right now in today's day and age. And that was to me one of the most fascinating things. And the more and more I learned Silambam, I realized that there were so many different details to it. And I felt that it was almost like a calling. I felt that I could do more with for Silambam as well, in terms of creating awareness, in terms of getting more people to know the value of Silambam in a different way. Because the minute we think of Silambam, we think of men in some rural village wearing a dhoti and
Kamal Hassan.
Kamal Hassan.
Always, Sant Potter. Always. That's always the first thing that people ask me. But Silambam is so much more than that. And I think for me, I was just blessed to have had the opportunity to have a taster of that. And then it's almost a sin to not take it forward. Because to know that such an amazing art form exists, to have the opportunity to learn it and experience it, and then not do anything about it, yeah, I can't even imagine doing that. So for me, I used to think, my master has been teaching Silambam for the last 32 years. This Ayudha Puja will be his 32nd year of teaching Silambam. And I sometimes think, okay, even when I do have a child, the next generation, and if I want my child to learn Silambam, and then after Power Pandyanasana, what happens? How many people are there like my master to carry forward this art form? And then to think that I might be a witness to the death of an art form which I have experienced was one of the most scariest thoughts I had. So then the only thing that I could do is to learn as much as I can and spread it as much as I can. So my love for Bharatanatyam will never go. I love Bharatanatyam, and my Bharatanatyam guru has been so supportive of my journey in Silambam. She still encourages me so much, and Bharatanatyam will never go out of my life. It's just that Silambam has kind of taken up a space wherein, like you said earlier, I have found a purpose and a calling, because I know that my efforts can make a difference to the art form. And I think being a designer and an artist myself, it takes on a much higher meaning rather than just looking at it from a layman's point of view as just a martial art form. For me, Silambam in its essence is an art form, and then it's a sport, it's a martial art form, and so on.
Beautiful. I'd like to add here something which I picked up. I'd like to share it here. I'm so excited, and I'm going to look for you to repeat that line again. Okay? So she tells her story, and as she's telling her story, she says, I cannot be a witness, I hope I'm quoting you right, I cannot be a witness to the death of an art form which I have had the privilege of tasting. Right? And it would be almost a sin not to pursue it. She used that line earlier. Now, many a time, we think that we have to go after our purpose in life. And I always tell people that if you're just tuned, your purpose will arrive. Rumi says it even more beautifully. He says what you're seeking is seeking you. So she had to just be there when she went to the YMCA grounds in 2012. You had to just be there, and then the rest of the journey just unfolded in front of her. So that's really so magical, and that's how magically purpose can enter our lives when you are least expecting it to. It'll come chupke chupke. That's the way it happens. It doesn't happen like that many a time. So fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Very quick question. Yeah, we'll give her a round of applause for that. Beautiful. Just a quick question. If you were to describe Silambam beyond an art form, what does Silambam do to Aishwarya? What does it mean to you personally beyond an art form?
Silambam is primarily a physical activity, but to me it is much, much more than that. It doesn't just take care of my physical wellness, but it also takes care of my emotional and mental wellness as well. My birthday just went by recently, and my mom asked me, shall we go to the temple? I said, I'm going for Silambam class in the morning. So to me, it's almost like a form of meditation. For me, what matters is that I start my day there in the ground with my team, with my master, doing something that I'm always, I'm a bit of an organizational OCD person. I think we're similar in that way. Yeah. So my days are all chalked out. I compartmentalize my time and all of that. And it's always one after the other because I'm juggling between different things. But when I do Silambam, it's amazing because it puts me in the moment. And there's nothing else that can come in between. And which is why I keep saying Silambam for me is almost like a form of meditation. I'm not somebody who sits down in the temple and meditates for hours together. But through that 3 hours of training, some days during tournaments we train 10, 12 hours. And when we train, we don't feel it, right? It's only when we lie down on the bed, then we're like, ouch. But for me, that it's all of that put together.
I think your most profound answer came when you said, when your mom invited you to go to the temple, you said, I'm going to my Silambam class, my Silambam practice. I think many of us confuse the whole act of prayer. Prayer is not a ritual, prayer is not time-bound, prayer is not space-bound, prayer is not venue-bound. Prayer is when you can offer yourself to the higher energy, to the cause of all creation. And that's what happens through immersion. And the meditation that she talks about comes from the immersion she experiences when she is doing Silambam. And I think it is true of all of us. You know, I've had a particularly rough day, rough week, congested lungs, and a whole lot of issues. But in the last 35 to 40 minutes, I've kind of healed. Because for me, this is my immersion, you know, to be in front of an audience, sharing learnings, curating, this is what I enjoy. And I think each one enjoys it in their own way. It could be cooking, it could be gardening, it could be writing, it could be music, it could be playing a sport, it could be anything. So thank you for sharing that. I'll now go to the gentleman over there with my next set of questions for you. Tell me about, since we have 3 guests, I'm going to take the liberty of curtailing the audience interaction if necessary, because I really want to flesh out their stories, so please bear with me. Going on with Arun and Vikram, a question I had was, when you look at what you've achieved, which is 55 schools, 60,000 children on the GetFit side, okay? My one question I have is, do you feel this is good pace? Do you feel sometimes restless that you've not done enough? How do you think back to that moment when your first school signed up? Okay, what kind of hurdles have you overcome and you still face when selling the idea of sport in a very marks-driven, grades-driven, non-sport academic focus-driven country?
Yeah. I think the first part of the question I'll answer, and the second part will probably be better. See, in terms of numbers, you could do 200,000 kids tomorrow, but that doesn't mean you're actually doing well. It's more about the actual impact you're making for those kids that you're working with. That's basically how we judge our success. And we don't even want to call it success, we call it progress. How this idea started was, like I said, a friend of mine went to school and she wanted me to take a look at her physical education system. So I went into the school and I think there were girls in the 9th and 10th standard, and none of them could catch a ball. So if you toss a ball at them, they were scared of it. And that's where the eyes opened. And we personally believe that sport is like food. When it's made properly, everybody likes it. So the same thing with the kids in the school, right? Same thing with the kids in the school. If you make them play sport the right way, everybody loves it. That's basically how we started off the GetFit journey.
So it's not the numbers?
Exactly, it's the same thing for everything.
It's not the numbers, it's the
Not
quality,
at all. Not
it's
at all.
the ability to touch people and make them connect with what you're offering.
Exactly.
Right?
It's basically to make better people through sport. And if we see that happening, that's happiness.
Beautiful. It's to make better people, and if we see that happening, that's happiness. Beautiful point. Fantastic point. Thank you, Vikram. Arun. The second part of the question, on what hurdles do you face while selling the idea in a very, very skewed world?
So I want
a world skewed towards, non-sport driven academics.
So I want to talk about one incident which happened in one of the schools that we work with. There was this kid he was a special kid, right? So and he has never been a part of anything related to sport in his school, and he was probably in the 7th standard. And there was this one day when we were in school and this kid was just sitting in a corner during his PE class and all the others were playing and doing something. This kid was just sitting there and not doing anything at all. And then we just approached him and made him a part of something that was happening. The other kids didn't really, they can't think clever. They've always seen him sitting in a corner and not doing anything, and it was different for them. And when this kid actually came and started even tapping a ball or just catching a ball and throwing it to his friend, so that brought a tear to him. He said, I've been in this school for 7 odd years and I haven't caught a ball yet. And I've been a part of all these PE classes for 7 years. And his friends, I mean, they're kids and they really enjoyed the fact that another classmate of theirs who's never been a part of PE classes is participating with him in playing. And it brought all of them together and it was such a wonderful sight. And just that one instant, it kind of gave us goosebumps and it said, what we're doing is probably the right thing. Even this one kid probably has us going forward for maybe another 10-15 years or maybe for the rest of our lives. And if we can make difference to kids like that, and I think like he said, there's nothing else that can give you more happiness than that. So that's just adding to Vikram's answer and coming to your second part of the question, which is hurdles that we face. It's a massive hurdle because this is a mindset that's been kind of created over so many years. Academics is your first priority, and sport is always looked at as a recreational pursuit, if I can put it that way.
Sometimes it's a distraction as well.
Yep, mostly a distraction. So if there's something that they want to blame if a kid does not perform well in academics,
It's playing too much.
sports is the first thing that gets the pink slip. So it's always a challenge. So what we've noticed is there are schools that have younger management, and people who are slightly younger are receptive to something like this. That's a battle that we are fighting even now. We still haven't found the correct answer to it, but we're just persevering through it, and we're definitely going to stay this way, and we will find an answer to it that somehow make them understand that sport is not a distraction, it is not for recreation, it is for your own good. It is what makes you healthy both physically and mentally, and that's something that we very strongly believe in, and we owe a lot to sport, for making us who we are today. And that's something that we definitely want to give the current generation and the generations to come.
Fantastic. The most significant learning from their answer to my questions there was doing things that make you happy. When you do stuff that makes you happy, then it doesn't really matter what challenges you're faced with. The challenges recede in terms of their ability to cause you any discomfort. The pain will be there, but it won't cause any suffering. And that's what I see in both their approaches to their work. They are at every moment living that sense of complete joy in terms of being able to touch that child over there who is having a different experience through a physical education curriculum that they are introducing. Right? That's what keeps you going. So no hurdle is going to be insurmountable in that sense. You keep pushing forward. Very powerful answers there. How does something like Life is a Ball come into your life? How did the idea of setting up an NGO, and you've touched something like 12,000 kids in this time in Tamil Nadu and Telangana, 2 states that you've worked in. How did Life is a Ball as an idea start? And B, is it easier to deal with that constituency than it is to deal with the for-profit schools, the corporates, the GetFit side of the constituency?
So Life is a Ball was something that initially started off by Vikram as an initiative where he wanted to give away used footballs to schools or to kids, to orphanages and stuff.
Okay.
And that slowly, he continued doing that, and he, through a football coach, he was just teaching basic football in a few schools. So once we started GetFit, what we realized was we were able to make a difference to the lives of a lot of kids in private schools through sport, and we wanted to do something very similar to a government school kid as well, because every kid is equal. I mean, if he or she does not have the ability to pay for something, it doesn't mean he should be deprived of it, especially something as fundamental as sport and play. And which is why we started approaching government schools and incorporating the GetFit curriculum into those schools and teaching those kids physical education the right way and making them enjoy sport and the fact that you can learn so many different life values through sport. We started off with Chennai, with a few corporation schools. We decided that it would make a lot of sense to go through the government, because if a word is put in from the education department, the schools listen to us, and we followed a similar approach in Telangana as well. And that's how we reached from, we started from 30 odd kids to around 12,000 kids right now with Life is a Ball alone.
So when you do work on the Life is a Ball side, when you offer the GetFit curriculum, you don't charge a fee to the school. That's how the model works.
Correct.
And do you get to subsidize some of your work for Life is a Ball through what you do earn as a company on the GetFit side? Does GetFit fund the NGO completely?
So that was the model.
That was the model.
Yes. So we wanted GetFit to reach a position where it could fund schools through the Life is a Ball program. It didn't make sense for us to just do it for profit, because the goal was a lot bigger. The mission was to create a sporting culture in the country, and if we wanted money out of it, I don't think we'd be reaching anywhere. And that's precisely why Life is a Ball is extremely close to our hearts. And even now, the kind of potential that we see with Life is a Ball school kids, the government school kids, is way superior than a private school kid for various reasons. But again, every time we say Life is a Ball, it has a different feel to it than when we talk about GetFit.
Okay, do you want to add something, Vikram?
Just in terms of how it started. So like Arun said, I used to organize a lot of events, and most of the equipments were going waste. So one day we decided to go into an orphanage, the YMCA Boys Town, which is a bunch of kids from the Tsunami Project. So we went in and tossed one football out to maybe 30-35 kids, and every single kid was going crazy. They were falling, jumping, laughing, running, crying, whatever. And nothing gives me more happiness, other than personal, to see kids having fun playing sport. There are like a bunch of other things as well, but we'll keep that for another day. But seeing kids have fun through sport is I'd say the biggest driving force for us, right? And that's how the name Life is a Ball came about as well. Because we believe a ball can actually bring a life to a kid.
And even in the other sense, Life is a Ball.
Life is a Ball, has
Absolutely.
to be. Yeah.
So it's a fantastic name. It gives
Thank you.
It gives a lot of flavor to understanding life. Thank you. Thank you. We'll go to Aishwarya for her question, and then I'll come to the audience for your questions. But we're going to have very limited time for audience interaction. I'm timing this. So Aishwarya, my question for you is, how do you think Silambam and your art go together finally? How do you blend the two? Your immersion in Silambam and your immersion in art, where is the confluence?
I believe that whatever it is that we find through our journey in life that we love to do and that brings happiness, they can all be connected in some way or the other. It's just that we should want to connect them. If we want to split things up, then yeah, go ahead.
They seem like two apart.
Two completely different worlds altogether. But for me, Silambam is something that influences the way I am as a person. And it did not happen overnight, and I know that it's going to keep the way in which it influences me is also going to keep on evolving. The reason being, when I first started Silambam, I didn't know anything about it. Now I know that it's a sport, that there are tournaments held across, in so many other countries, and there are people from so many other countries who learn Silambam and who compete. My experiences in the tournament circuit have taught me that my mind and body is capable of so much more than what I can comprehend in terms of, like you said, I think pain is a part of everyday life for us. Because we train, our body gets sore, we get blisters, but it's such an amazing pain to go through, because it's like a pain that you're proud of, because I know that I've trained hard to get that pain. I know my parents may not agree to it, but still. And there are so many things that come together here, right? Being a woman, a lot of people have asked me, being a woman, what does it feel like to be a Silambam practitioner? And I say, I don't walk into the training ground thinking I'm a woman Silambam practitioner, I'm a woman Silambam practitioner. I don't think any of us walk into a space thinking I'm a woman artist, or I'm a woman photographer, or I'm a woman poet. We are all individuals. And Silambam and physical activity in general, because I enjoy trekking, I enjoy cycling, and there are so many things that come in the way, right? Everything from skin color to saying, oh, why do you have to go out and get tan? Why all this? So many things come into the picture. And Silambam has made me realize in so many ways that we pay attention to the most trivial things in life, and all the important things are just floating by. Whereas on the contrary, I think the fact that so many of the elements in Silambam, be it the rhythm, be it the movement, be it the line, it's all the same with art and design. The way in which I experience Silambam has changed the way in which I interact with people. Traditional martial arts makes us aware of not just our own body, but our personal space, and the way in which we interact with other people. How aware are we about ourselves and our immediate surroundings? I did not learn Silambam for self-defense, though it's popular belief that any woman who learns any martial art form is for self-defense. Absolutely not. I think that Silambam is something that, even though it's 3,000 years old, I believe that it has a lot of relevance in the present-day contemporary scenario, irrespective of age group, irrespective of gender, irrespective of prior physical fitness level. Right? Anybody can start learning Silambam, and there's just the way in which the activity orients the body and the person by itself. It's made me realize so much about my own character. It's made me somebody who can handle emotional roller coasters in a much more stable manner. Because we learn not only to control our body through sports, but also to take care of our mind and our emotions as well, right? And which is why I have so much of respect for the work that you guys are doing, because I feel that sports and physical activity has a positive effect in every single sphere of life, right? Whether it's competition, whether it's overcoming pain, whether it's failure and success, whether it is making decisions absolutely in a fraction of a second, in so many different ways. I think it's actually really nice. I've learned a lot through the conversations, because I feel like creativity and physical activity or sport go hand in hand in terms of making people a lot more holistic in every single realm that we can possibly be a part of in life. And it's unfortunate that just like how sports is considered a distraction, art class and PT period is usually always the ones that are cancelled for the other subjects. And that's precisely what we are working on.
We are working
right?
on changing.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm picking up is that an immersive activity like learning Silambam makes you a better human being, teaches you equanimity, gives you a method to approach your art form, and gives you the canvas to express yourself, right? It kind of stretches the canvas. That's really what I picked up from what you
That,
just said.
and just to add on to that, I think it also made me realize the importance of kind of defining ourselves every day by the things that we do. Because I feel that all of us are multifaceted. None of us are single track. Right? So for me, all of these things make me who I am. Whether it's art or design or Silambam or Bharatanatyam or trekking or traveling, all of this is what makes me what I am. And I think, which is why I said Bliss for me is not just Silambam, but through Silambam, understanding that all of these things put together and knowing that I can use my time in so many different ways, for me is what Bliss is.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm going to regretfully have to skip the audience interaction. I had a sense we will overstep on time on this, but I'll still close the session in exactly 7 minutes from now. So we'll now go straight to the quiz segment from the three guests. We'll start with Aishwarya. Okay, Aishwarya's going first. You can stay on and interact with the guests.
Okay. So Silambam has been portrayed in the Tamil film industry for quite a while. So my question is, in the Tamil film industry, which actor is most popular for Silambam?
MGR.
Who? Okay. We'll give it to Rajesh. It's her call, it's her question. So she heard it. Sorry, I heard you, but Ramesh overshouted. Yeah. Ramesh, please come forward. So the question was, which is the most famous Tamil actor on whom Silambam has been portrayed, and the answer is MGR. Arun, your question.
Okay, so my question is quite straightforward, and I'm guessing almost 90% of the crowd here will know the answer to it. It's about Chennai. So there was this one international event that was organized in Chennai, which is probably the reason why we have majority of the sporting infrastructure that Chennai boasts of today. What is the name of the event and when was it organized?
Chennai Open. Sept Games.
Asian Games.
South
Asian Games.
Sept Games, you can stand up. Sept Games, stand up.
Sept Games, and when was it held?
19.
I think you can still give it to Sept Games.
Yeah, Sept Games is fine. You can stand up.
Yeah, you can come forward, Sept Games.
So Sept Games, which was held in 1995, which created most of the sporting infrastructure that the city currently has.
Thank you, Arun. So this question this time gets a special T-shirt, which is Life is a Ball T-shirt, and I think this size should fit. Vikram, your question.
Alright, my question's a little tough.
Yeah, sure. Google search.
No, this is just the question. Hopefully, all the football fans over here might be able to answer this. Anyone can answer it, even you guys. So which English defender scored the most crucial goal to win the first ever Premier League title?
Beckham.
No.
Tony Adams.
Now they'll guess all the.
Just one more guess, and then we'll go to another question. I have another one.
Peter Crouch.
No, this was in 1993.
Steve Bruce.
Yep, Steve Bruce is the answer.
Okay, so we get second mug and the T-shirt.
You won a second cup.
Who's the player?
Steve Bruce.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's session. Please stay back till I do a final wrap. I'm going to take a moment to thank our guests and then do a final wrap. It's been a fascinating conversation. I'm so sorry I could not allow audience interaction because of the kida in my head that I must finish in 90 minutes. But please stay on and interact with the guests. For my part, I feel very enriched with the conversation. So thank you, Vikram, Arun, and Aishwarya. One of the things that I'm taking away is and I'll come back to it in my rap again, but the fact that we have such young talent in our country, and we have such young, right-thinking talent in our country, and I think that deserves a huge round of applause. Thank you for being who you are. On behalf of Odyssey and on behalf of our gifting partner Hazel, who are the people that create these wonderful journals, we are happy to give you your Bliss Catcher trophy. Thank you, and your hamper for Hazel. Thank you. And there you go, Arun. Today Ashwin couldn't be here from Odyssey Bookstore, but I'm doing the honors on his behalf. Thank you. You know, the bigger takeaway for me this evening is, of course, the fact that all three of them are driven by a sense of purpose. And most people believe that the purpose of life is to be comfortable earning a living, which is earn, save, repeat, right? And somewhere along the way, be unhappy about the life that you're leading. So this is the answer that I get most of the time when we go to corporates, when we talk to people. How is life? Chal raha hai yaar, kat rahi hai, you know, guzara ho raha hai. Yedo sar poichu pora hai, bhumi ki bara marne pora hai. You know, this is the way people respond. There's no life in them, there's no energy in them. And here we see three young people with a high sense of purpose, a complete belief in what they're doing, total conviction, great passion. And one of the things that I'm picking up is, again, to quote Rumi, my favorite, he said, allow yourself to be drawn silently to the strange pull of what you love. Allow yourself to be drawn silently to the strange pull of what you love. Which means, al mella varum, al vartum, ahista, ahista, chupke, chupke al varum. It will never lead you astray. And that's what I'm picking up from these three stories. You know, the fact that they've gone after it, it's a 5-year time span for both of them. Literally, your timelines kind of mirror each other, run parallelly, and so much can happen in 5 years. I'm looking forward to hearing a lot from you people on how your journeys progress. Keep catching your bliss, keep following what you believe in, and thank you so much for being here this evening with us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. If you like this program and you'd like to follow me, please download my app, which is AVIS Viswanathan, and you can find it on Google Play or on the App Store. I share my daily learnings there in the form of blog posts, video blogs, and podcasts. We have the next edition of Bliss Catchers on 28th October. We have two musicians, one a disciple of Balamurli Krishna, who went away to pursue a corporate career in the United States, a techie, and the music drew him back. And today he is exploring rare compositions and presenting them to the world. He's immersed himself in teaching music. Raghavan Manivan is his name. And then we have a man who is very popular, who's known as Drums Murli, a man who went out kind of, you know, following his parents' advice to become a chartered accountant and ended up becoming a drummer instead. So we have Drums Murli and Raghavan Manivan, 28th October. If it is the last Saturday of the month, between January and December, if it's happening anywhere, it's happening at Odyssey, ladies and gentlemen. Be there next time, next month. Thank you so much.